Hey, what's going on? I'm Guy Haberman. Here on YouTube, glad you're here. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel. Few things to dive into. First up, Deebo Samuel health update. Kyle Shanahan's going to talk this afternoon and maybe get some even more clarity. It started today. Schefter reported that Deebo's 50-50 as to whether or not he's going to play Sunday, 3:30 Pacific against the Lions. If you saw it, you know, as you did, 37 million people watched it. It was kind of like that Browns injury, weird, but it sounds like it's actually better than that Browns injury that really did knock him out because of a fracture. Here's what Rap Sheet said today about it.
Samuel was not able to finish the 49ers win. First was evaluated for a concussion, then was cleared, then was knocked out of the game with what was termed a shoulder injury, had a battery of tests yesterday morning. My understanding is there is no fracture in the shoulder of Deebo Samuel, which is good news. It was actually the same shoulder as he injured last time, had a hairline fracture, missed a couple games, did all the tests this time. They believe no fracture. That is good. As far as the actual status going forward, that still remains up in the air. Kyle Shanahan going to talk to reporters earlier today, likely to get some clarity. The belief is this is not a major injury. Samuel got to work on rehab right after it happened and has been telling people he thinks that he will be okay.
All right, so there's that. And, you know, you got to add to it the CJ Gardner Johnson rivalry for Deebo. Whoa, it just crashed. We're back. Kicked myself out of my own stream. All right, I got to add the, hopefully you made it through that. I got to add the CJ Gardner Johnson video back in here. Here we go.
Listen, don't be friendly when you see me, because you be so flashy. You better hope, bro. You better hope all that talking you be doing when we see y'all, whatever round it may be, because I can guard you. You can't run around.
All right, I'm gonna not try to play that video again. Hopefully that's what it was, and not the there's some rain here in the Bay Area, and rain can create problems. But all these cords are underground, so hopefully there's not an issue. Man, no more CJ Gardner Johnson. CJ Gardner Johnson and Deebo, big rivals. I don't know, that's probably not in Deebo's mind. You got to think if Deebo's 50-50, and the good news that you heard there from Rap Sheet was that there's not a fracture. Kyle Shanahan's going to talk today. If you're wondering when is that Deebo news gonna come to people, Kyle Shanahan's going to talk today at So hopefully we'll get some clarity then. But my guess is we're not going to get a ton of clarity from Kyle at 3:30 because we're going to be waiting on how does Deebo Samuel feel Monday. Today's Monday, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If there's no structural damage to him and it's pain management, then you got to think Deebo's going to play. But, you know, the Cleveland injury was weird. The thing you say about Deebo, when he gets hurt, he's not flailing around. He's not pounding the grass. He's not doing this whole thing with his face. Like, you really can't tell when you look at Deebo's face whether he's been knocked out of the game or whether he's going to be back in 2 plays, how much pain he's in. And so that's what, made, I think, the Browns injury weird when it happened in the Browns game. Nobody really knew exactly when it happened. This game, you knew when it happened because you saw him go down, same shoulder. Looked like maybe they were going to evaluate him for a head injury. And then it became clear that he wasn't sticking around. But I got to think 50-50 on Monday with no structural damage, no hairline fracture like last time, means he's going to try and play. But, even then, what you have to prepare for now, if you're Kyle Shanahan, is the possibility that something happens to him during the game, whether it's Aiden Hutchinson because you got him on an end around. There's not really much evidence in Kyle's play calling history that if a player is playing at less than 100%, he protects that guy from collisions, right? It tends to look like if he's out there, then we're going to run all the same stuff. So if Deebo's out there, if it's not 50-50, but he's feeling, 60% of himself or whatever, if he takes a hit on that shoulder, could have hit on that shoulder, knock him back out of the game. Could he be more susceptible to a hairline fracture? Whatever. And certainly the Lions know that, right? People didn't like last week when Mark Shimura said we got to hit Brock Purdy, and if you take a 15-yarder, no biggie. But there's a reason that hockey does lower body injuries. There's a reason these sports where physicality is a part of the sport, there's a reason people try to hide what the injury is if you can, because you don't want the defense to know, the other team to know where they can hit you to hurt you or knock you out of the game. The 49ers are a different offense when Deebo Samuel's out of the game. Deebo's worth like 1.5 yards per play. That's what happens. That's how much they lose to their offensive yard per play average when Deebo's off the field. So the Lions, just knowing that, the first hurdle is going to be get them into this game. The second hurdle is going to be get them through the game. And I think the challenge for Kyle Shanahan this week is going to be, we've got to prepare for both. We've got to prepare for what it looks like when Deebo's healthy, and we got to prepare for what it looks like when Deebo isn't. Do I think they can beat the Lions without Deebo Samuel? Yes, I do. But not if they're not ready for that scenario to potentially pop up. Are we going to see them swing past Deebo through a train wreck on the first series of the game? I got to tell you, I don't want to see it. But if he's out there, they'll call the play. I mean, because the play works. The play can be a touchdown. That's the problem. Is that pass, that pass they ran to Deebo that he got hurt on. That was a good play. That was a really good play. So, Deebo's going to want it. He's going to want to run through a car wash. That's what it is. I mean, he's running through a car wash every time he gets the ball, except instead of little bumpers and little swingy things at the top, little noodles, it's other human beings trying to crush him and knock him out of the game. So, that to me is like the top priority of what you're watching for. Anyway, if you're still here right now, the last 2 times I tried to play a video, the thing crashed. So I'm going to play this. Thank you for sticking through my disappearances. Can't Cal have 2 wristbands? Yeah. There was one other here, but do you think he suffered a concussion and they're keeping it quiet? No. Because you don't have to keep it quiet. He missed the game. If he suffered a concussion, if you had the strength to keep it quiet, like if you had the influence to keep it quiet, you have the influence to pass the test. I don't think that's what it is, and we know that he's had the shoulder, so I think that's pretty reasonable. So that's the Deebo update. I think goodish news, I would say. The fact that there's no fracture is goodish news on Deebo. The weird part about it, and the thing that would make you hesitate is, why didn't he come back in the game then? Did they know that he didn't have a fracture before the end of the game, and they still kept him out of the game? Is there something else going on there? If there's no fracture, why did he not come back into that game? Or did they not know the results until after the game, and they were worried it was a fracture, and so they kept him out for precautionary reasons? Or is there something going on? That would be, that'd be a concern because it happened early, right? And he was in sweats at halftime. So they didn't act hopeful. All right. Number 2, hopefully this plays properly. I just saw this in my timeline before. I was just going to do a quick Deebo video. And I saw this in my timeline. The discourse. I'm going to play this whole thing because I find it interesting. This is Ryan Clark, and they're talking about Brock. And you can read some of what Awful Announcing wrote at the beginning of the quote there. But Ryan Clark dives into makes several other points on Brock Purdy, which could inflame some of you. And I think he makes some good points, and I think he makes some not good points. So here we go. We're gonna play this. Hopefully, if I disappear, I'll be right back.
Make a confession. The single hardest thing I had to do this year was act like Brock Purdy deserved to be in the conversations with the other people we're mentioning in that tweet. Because he was playing extremely well and operating in that offense and distributing the ball to Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, we had to continue to include him in conversations with the Lamar Jacksons. We had to continue to include him in conversations with the Josh Allen. Those things are not alike. Brock Purdy is a fine player. Brock Purdy can operate in Kyle Shanahan's offense at an extremely efficient level. Brock Purdy doesn't raise the level of play of anyone around him. And so when you talk about Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, the people around them benefit from having those sorts of players at the quarterback position. Brock Purdy benefits from having the sort of players he has at the skill positions around him. And so when we look at that game against the Green Bay Packers, even with Jordan Love throwing an inopportune, inexplicable interception to end the game, I was sitting there watching them going, man, the NFL world should be excited that Jordan Love doesn't play for the San Francisco 49ers. And we are starting, at least in my opinion, to get into the realm the San Francisco 49ers used to be with Jimmy Garoppolo, where it was, with Kyle Shanahan calling plays, we could be really good. With the players around him, we could be really good. But can our quarterback take us to the next level? And now that it's getting down to the critical football moments, to the moments that turn good players into legends, that turn good teams into teams we never forget, you're starting to see you don't take Brock Purdy over Jared Goff right now. And you for sure don't take Brock Purdy over the two dudes on the other side in the AFC. So if you're the San Francisco 49ers, you're thinking to yourself right now, this team that we were starting to run through our quarterback better run through Uncle Shannon's nephew, Christian McCaffrey.
Okay. So a few things there. One, I think he starts with a false premise. He starts with the premise. I don't know why he had to. This is what happens when you let social media, I think, to some degree affect your opinion. Although, and I'm going to not be sarcastic at all or like flippant as I address this, because I like Ryan Clark generally. I mean, it's not about like or don't like. We're just talking about opinions here, so that's irrelevant. But I'd be very curious why he felt like he had to pretend, quote unquote, that Brock Purdy was in the same conversation with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. Was it because he got social media backlash, or was it just because it's possible that like ESPN producers were always just telling him, all right, today we're going to do, is Purdy as good as Mahomes? And he'd be like, in the meeting, guys, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? Like, no. This is, hey, look, and some producer who didn't play the game and who is like, half his age, give or take, is telling him like, no, this is what we're going to do today. And he's like, this is dumb. I don't want to do this. Right. This is stupid conversation. We should be talking about something else. So maybe there's some of that. I don't remember at any point this year debating whether or not Brock Purdy was as good as Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. I remember once briefly, because there was just the discourse, word I'm tired of. Discourse has replaced narrative for words I'm most tired of. I think John said, like, making a point, like, well, would you trade Josh Allen for Brock Purdy? And of course, the immediate answer, both of us, was like, no, of course not. That's not even the point we were making was that's not a real conversation. As I like to say, 8 billion people on earth, a lot of opinions. Not all of them are ones that we have to like address this conversation's happening, right? So the first thing is, I think he is misconstruing or conveniently lopping together. I don't know. Like if he was here, I'd say, Ryan, I think there's a difference between the conversation that was happening this year and the one that you are saying was happening this year. The one that was happening this year was, who is the MVP of the league? Who is the most valuable player? And most valuable player is a statistical award, mostly, right? That's why for a period of time, the MVP award was Dak Prescott versus Brock Purdy. It wasn't Dak and Brock versus Lamar. It wasn't Dak and Brock versus Josh Allen. It wasn't Dak and Brock versus Mahomes. That doesn't mean at that point in time that people thought that Patrick Mahomes would go behind Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy in a draft if all players became draftable players off of other teams. Doesn't mean that people thought Lamar would go behind him or that Josh Allen would go behind him. That's a different conversation. The conversation that was being had a lot this year, and I had it a lot, was who's the MVP of the league. And MVP of the league, Dak Prescott, 36 touchdowns, 9 picks. That's where he finished up. Now, he lost the MVP when he got blown out in Buffalo. At a point in time with like a month left in the season, even less. I mean, Josh Allen's team was on the verge of not making the playoffs at the end of the year. Doesn't mean he's not one of the best quarterbacks, a tier 1 quarterback. For a good stretch of the year, Lamar's numbers were really down in terms of just like touchdown production. And people were talking about Lamar ahead of those other two guys. Mahomes, 27 touchdowns, 14 picks. Their offense, what's wrong with them? Why isn't there that he doesn't have the talent around him? He doesn't have receivers. You notice that, right? Ryan Clark's talking about Brock Purdy doesn't elevate the talent around him. The talent around him elevates him. And I think it's true that Mahomes and Allen and Lamar Jackson like pull people with them, right? They are less dependent on the talent around them than Brock Purdy is. But I think you could watch Patrick Mahomes for a lot of the season and go, he is somewhat, everybody is a little dependent on who's catching the football, who you throwing the ball to. So I think the first point I want to make on Ryan Clark's argument here is that I don't think there are any legitimate arguments about, is Brock Purdy as good as Patrick Mahomes? I don't. The MVP argument, I think, is what he heard a lot of, what there was a lot of, and that is different than who's the best quarterback, right? Like if Brock Purdy, put it this way, if Brock Purdy won the MVP this year, when Mike Sando's athletic article came out in a few months, in June or July, whenever it comes out, where he evaluates or he ranks quarterbacks based on the votes of coaches and front office people, would Brock Purdy have been a tier 1 quarterback? No, he would not have been tier 1. If he'd won the MVP this year, would that mean I think he's as good as Patrick Mahomes, or even that the voters think he's as good as Patrick Mahomes? No, I don't think that's what that means. The MVP and who is the best player are different things. If they weren't, then it would just, Patrick Mahomes should win the award every year. If they weren't, you would just give it to those guys every year. Tom Brady should just win it all the time. But that's not the way so I just want to start with that. I don't think Ryan Clark is rarely, I don't ever watch him and think he's being disingenuous. I think he's pretty serious about his business. That thing where he had with Tua this year, where he apologized to Tua. I think Ryan Clark is very serious. Some people are far less serious, are unserious, are, they're tongue in cheek. They're just playing the game. I think Ryan's pretty serious about his takes, but I don't think his premise is correct. That I don't know why he felt like he had to act that way, because an MVP conversation and a who is the greatest quarterback right now in the league conversation are two different things. But on to the next point here. He said he doesn't raise the level of play of people around him. He benefits from the talent around him. They don't benefit from him. Well, again, I think he's making it more complicated than it needs to be. He does not elevate a team the way that Patrick Mahomes does, right? If you said right now, okay, do you want to pay Patrick Mahomes the richest contract in NFL history? You go, well, if someone's got to do it, I'll give it to Patrick. If you said the same thing about Purdy, I'm going to go give him $200 million guaranteed. Would you hesitate? You should. The Niners aren't about to do that. But to say he doesn't, like it's black and white, elevate the talent around him at all, I think that's pretty crazy too. I mean, they got better when he became their quarterback. So you can't just put anybody back there and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, they're just going to carry you. At Christian McCaffrey, it doesn't work like that. So I don't think it's correct. I do understand the context of what he's saying, which is it's not like these other guys. Okay, fine. I'll grant you that. I don't think we're arguing that. He said Goff's better than Brock. I disagree with that. I'd rather have Brock Purdy. Brock this year, 31 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Goff this year, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Brock, 69%. Purdy, 67. Goff, 67%. Goff threw for more yards. Goff had way more attempts. Goff's a really good player. I think his lack of athleticism, mobility is a problem for them, and I think it's going to be a problem for them this week. I think Brock separates himself a little bit there. Also, Brock is younger, which means he's reached this place where even if you think he's comparable to Goff, he's done it in 2 years, which means in theory there's more ceiling there. Maybe in 5 years we look back and they're similar players. Right now, statistically, in some categories, they're similar players. Brock's yards per attempt is higher, but and yards per completion. But Brock has so much still to be discovered. I don't think you would swap Goff and Brock. I think the Niners are worse if Goff is their quarterback. So I would not want to do that. I disagree with Ryan Clark on that point. And then the last point he made was, I don't know exactly how he said it. I can go back here. This point about running the offense through him. Let me play this again.
You for sure don't take Brock Purdy over the two dudes on the other side in the AFC. So if you're the San Francisco 49ers, you're thinking to yourself right now, this team that we were starting to run through our quarterback better run through Uncle Shannon's nephew, Christian McCaffrey.
Well, good news. I mean, Christian McCaffrey was one of the most productive players in the NFL this year. So, I think they were already running things through Christian McCaffrey, weren't they? I don't think they were not running things through Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey is he's the leading rusher in the league by a wide margin, 1,459 rushing yards for Christian McCaffrey this year. So they're already running stuff through Christian McCaffrey. That's part of what they love about Brock is Christian doesn't get to take direct snaps. Christian can catch the ball, so you throw him the ball. So, McCaffrey had 7 catches. McCaffrey had a season-high tying 7 catches in the game against the Packers. So they're already running things through Christian McCaffrey. But they're not only a Christian McCaffrey team. They also run them through Deebo. They run them through Juwan Jennings. The throw that he made to Juwan Jennings, you win the Super Bowl, it goes down as it's just an all-time terrifying great throw. It's all-time terrifying throw. An all-time nuts in your stomach while the ball's in the air throw. It's a terrifying throw. Terrifying. I saw the Niners posted last night or this morning the reverse angle of that throw. Basically, the field view from I don't have it here, but if you go to the Niners Twitter page, they posted it in slow motion. And it looks, because of depth perception, like the ball must be coming to Ayuk. Somebody needs to ask Ayuk what he was thinking as that ball was in the air, because all you see is the ball in the air and 3 Packers defenders. And then here comes Juwan Jennings, 3rd and Benny, soaring through the air to make that play. Great throw. But, I just think his premise is incorrect. But again, I don't think Ryan is not generally, I don't watch every day, but I think for the most part, Ryan Clark's not a bullshit guy. So that's why I said I'm going sarcasm free through this, because I take it seriously. I'm not here to take a shot at Ryan Clark, although I know some of you want to take shots at anybody that says something mean about Brock, and some of you don't. I like to think all year long I've been Goldilocks on the right temperature when it comes to Purdy. They're not going to make him a Mahomes, but he's better than Garoppolo, and he's a guy that can win him a Super Bowl, and I believe he can win him a Super Bowl. So on this team, if you put him on the I don't know, a bad team, it wouldn't go as well. But that's the case for most guys. I mean, go look at any team that's ever won a championship. They got great players. He does have Kyle Shanahan as his coach. And it's like the Eminem line or the final battle in 8 Mile, where he does the whole thing about, I do live with my mom, and my friend Cheddar Bob did shoot himself in the leg and all that stuff. Yeah, Deebo Samuel is on his team. And so is Christian McCaffrey. They've been using Christian McCaffrey. And no, nobody says he's Patrick Mahomes. So what are we arguing about here? That's the part that I would like to ask. I'm
about to make a confession.
Dramatic.
The single hardest thing I had to do this year was act like Brock Purdy deserved to be in the conversations with the other people we're mentioning in that tweet.
The single hardest thing. I don't know why he had to pretend that. I don't know why he couldn't say, I don't think he's the MVP. I don't know why did I think my guess is that producers made him do a bunch of topics he didn't want to do. That's my guess. But I don't know. I love the way everyone else listens.
Because he was playing extremely well and operating in that offense and distributing the ball to
Evan, all right, here, this is great. This is worth addressing. Evan says, Guy, there are people in this live chat that think Brock is better than Josh Allen. This is a real thing. I'll repeat the line I use a lot in these situations. I already said it once today. There are 8 billion people on Earth. You can find every opinion you want to find. If the argument is 7 people or 30 people or 100 people have this opinion, is that an opinion worth debating? The answer is no. Because if we spent all our time debating every single opinion that exists, we would just spin in circles talking about crazy stuff all the time, which actually is kind of what happens. But that's not, no, I'm not doing that right now. I am not ingesting that, right? Because you just can't accept every discussion as a real discussion, or else you say things like, we had to act this way. No, you didn't. We didn't have to act that way. I refuse to act that way. I refuse to act that way. Just like I saw somebody today, like, why is Rex Ryan letting Josh Allen off the hook? I watch Josh Allen. He's a superstar. Josh Allen to me is in the category of player that should eventually win the Super Bowl. And it'll be, devastating if he doesn't. And he just may not, because he happens to play in an era where the AFC is loaded with generational quarterbacks. Lamar, Mahomes, him, Burrow, maybe Herbert when Jim Harbaugh takes that job. Generational quarterbacks. VK. So he could have voiced that opinion all year, but instead waits until now. I think you're getting at, like, because Purdy didn't play a good game the other day, which he didn't. And I think the other thing about this take, it is a window into what the world will or would have looked like had the Niners lost, or if the Niners lose this week. So prepare yourselves. I'm preparing myself. And, I'm not on any particular side either, by the way. If it's sunny and beautiful and Brock Purdy plays poorly and they lose to the Lions this week, then there might be a problem. Like, you got to acknowledge that. But he hasn't played the game yet, so I don't know if there's a problem or not. Here's his chance to bounce back in crunch time. Superstar moment. With a less than, at minimum, we could say with a less than 100% Deebo Samuel. Then he's going to, maybe, if they do that, go to the Super Bowl and play either Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. He's going to have another opportunity to either look great or look bad. And then we'll have the offseason to figure out what comes next for the franchise, for him, what his ceiling is, how good is he, all that stuff. So I've said I think it's going to be Mahomes. Ravens looked excellent in the second half. I think I can't wait for that game. It's going to be a long wait on Sunday. I know that. It's going to be tough to lock in on that game because the 49ers have a real challenge ahead of them. And, I think they should be able to throw the ball on Detroit, but okay, that means putting the ball at risk. That means let's see. If it was just about the rain last week, Detroit can run the ball. I think the Niners, I think they can score this week. And I think the question then becomes, well, so is Kyle going to come out throwing the football again, just like they did against the Packers? Because it's not a very good pass defense? Because you can go at these corners? Zach Ertz, by the way, signing with the Detroit Lions, waiting until January 22nd. Great move by Ertz. Finally Ertz getting into the conference championship game. Report a little banged up. And so Ertz is on the practice squad. Is he going to play this week? I don't know. Seems kind of crazy. I'd be a little surprised if he has an impact on this game. But he gives him some depth. But I don't know. I guess you sign this week. You probably do try to play, right? Oof. Jeffa Jr. says the Ravens exposed the Niners. They beat their ass. I don't think they exposed them. But they did. Was it? Smack them cheeks. So I thought coming out of that game that would still be a great rematch. And I think it is a great rematch. But I don't think the Niners, given the way that they just played, I don't think they'd be favored in that game. John and I were talking about this the other day, and I said 3.5. I think that would be if and that might be too big. I think it might be 2.5. John said 2.5, and I think the more I thought about it, I think that's probably closer to correct. Ravens minus 2.5. Chiefs Niners. Guess the early line on Chiefs Niners. Part of this is how do these two games look like? If the Niners beat the Lions and it looks like the Packer game, and they kind of get lucky in it, then they're not going to be favored against either team. If they let's say both teams roll out, Niners, let's say both teams play the same game, win, Kansas City, then I think the Niners might be favored by like 1.5 against the Chiefs. But call me crazy. I do think the Niners were rusty, played tight all game. I truly believe we smashed Detroit this week. The Super Bowl will be a different story, though. I think you got to give Green Bay a lot of the credit. Give Green Bay credit because they're good. I was one who argued I don't think there'll be a lot of rust. Maybe there was some rust. I do think I thought they played tight, a little tight. I thought they played like a 1 seed playing a 7 seed when it's supposed to be easy and it's not. But then they all talked like they knew Green Bay was good. So, maybe that's not what happened. Maybe it was just the rain and Brock was off and their defense isn't great against the run anyway. And maybe Armstead's not 100%. And Chase Young instead of Cleveland Ferrell. Chase Young did not play well. I mentioned this last night, so I'm not going to get back into it, but he did not play well in that game. So maybe it was just real. Like there are some flaws here. And Ambry Thomas, 3rd and 15 or whatever, and you're going to YOLO ball it to Ambry. Like that's the recipe, right? This team consistently, when they get a play that puts the other team in 3rd and 15, you hold your breath. You go, all right, are they going to YOLO ball Ambry right here? Because that's the move. Because he's just not. He's improved, but when the ball is in the air, he can keep in line with his receiver, but he doesn't play the ball very well. I don't think. I mean, consistently, it doesn't feel, and that's kind of been the deal from the beginning. So, and they do have weapons. Detroit has weapons, but anyway, did they take them lightly? I thought they played that game like, we're the team that's supposed to win this game. So that's what should happen. And, in a weird way, the good news about playing the Lions is Detroit should have their attention. Now you play the Bucs, and I don't know if they fully have your attention, but but it's Baker. All due respect. Maybe you don't need your full attention, right? That's part of the Green Bay game was you didn't have to play your A game. Turned out your D+, C- game was good enough. Although in the red zone, they were A+ defense. That's what saved them. They were A+ in situations. Maybe Detroit makes them know, like, you better bring your A game today, right? This Green Bay game was a near death experience. So hopefully they put their seatbelt on now and keep their hands at 10-2 because it felt like they were driving that Lions game, one eye on the road, one eye texting. And I think Detroit should have their full attention. But again, I go back to this. They sure acted like Green Bay had their full attention, which is scary. You'd love to say that it was rust. You'd love to say they weren't focused on the opponent, but I know he's gone. It's Cleveland Ferrell's not an option. Drake Jackson is not an option. I wasn't saying he's back. I'm saying they miss him. I wasn't saying that's solvable. It's not solvable. Spencer, Baker is better than Dak. We'll die on that hill. Then he adds an LOL, which makes me think he's not serious. I disagree with that. Like, this is the way I look at that. Give one of those quarterbacks to Kyle Shanahan. Which one makes the 49ers a better team? Dak. Because Baker, I love watching Baker. Baker's got the skill set of a guy who should be a little more buttoned down than he is. Like Jordan Love and Baker both threw game-ending interceptions, similar situations. Bad throw by Jordan Love, too. Baker was not actually rolling to his right, reduced arm strength. Baker just threw it behind this guy. But he has like a naturally reduced arm strength. I would much rather Jordan Love try to make that play because Jordan Love is just, I think, more capable of making those kind of special plays. Baker wasn't trying to make it. It was going to be a really good throw, thread the needle, but it wasn't an extra special play. So he's got the skill set of a guy that should play a little more under control than he does. And Dak's got the skill set of a guy that should play under control, and he mostly does. Part of their game is throwing YOLO balls, and sometimes those are interceptions, one-on-ones, but he's got the arm to do it. By the way, the deep ball that Josh Allen threw that went through Stephon Diggs' hands last night, oh my God. What an incredible throw. Jacob Brown, whose instincts are better to aid Ambry, which is needed. Maybe this is a two-parter. I think you're referencing Jair Brown instead of Logan Ryan at safety. I thought Jair Brown should have played. Kyle Shanahan said after the game he'd missed 4 weeks. Tough spot to put him in. Did reference him being young, so they were a little concerned that he was going to make a mistake or two. But I think his athleticism, his physicality would serve them well in this game. I don't know. I got to look. It did not feel like he played much, if at all, on defense. Let's check the snap count. I saw a lot of Logan Ryan. I saw the clip today of Logan Ryan missing a tackle. You saw the touchdown they threw to the pylon where Logan Ryan got caught up, got screened off basically. But I was looking for 27. Didn't see a lot of them. I don't know that I saw any of him on defense. So let's where's my snap counts here? Anyway, I'd play him more. I thought they kind of missed the physicality, athleticism, especially in a secondary that's, Gibson made plays, Mooney Ward's making plays, but you're Diamador Lenore, I think everybody kind of knows it, so I'm not saying anything that isn't clear, but that's a good pick. Here we go. Defense. Total snaps. Did he play not a 1? Yeah, I didn't think I saw him. So no snaps for Jair Brown on defense. I don't know how that's even possible. Tayshaun Gibson played 67 snaps. Logan Ryan played 67 snaps. Played every snap. Every single snap. Wow. Now, part of that was 67 snaps, not a ton of snaps. There were 3 possessions. You just didn't need to rest them. Not that you would. I mean, you play the safety plays every snap. You're not rotating him like a defensive lineman. I thought coming into the game, because I remember last Wednesday I did a stream with Larry Krueger, and he's like, "Who do you start?" And I said Jair Brown, and then I said something that was very incorrect, which was, "But what does it really matter who starts the game? You can rotate them. You can play them both." And I thought that's what was going to happen. It's not what happened. Logan Ryan played every snap. So I'd like to see him play a little Jair Brown, but clearly there is, here's the thing. Easy for me to say this here. And I don't think you should always just say, well, defer to the coaches. Don't ask questions. But I mean, they are in the meeting rooms and they're in the film. So they do know who's making the correct decisions. They know who they can trust. It's pretty telling that they spoke volumes last week when they said we can trust Logan Ryan more. That said a lot. So it feels wrong to me, but you're not going to get an honest answer from them other than Kyle kind of gave as honest an answer as he could. He said he's missed 4 weeks, tough spot to put him in. In other words, I don't want him to I think he might make a game-changing mistake, mental error. We're gonna take a little less physicality. It'll be interesting to see this week, especially bad weather. If you are a split second late mentally, and then you try to make a move on bad turf, you're going to be even later than normal. So let's see this week if they change that or not. If they play him a little bit now that he's been back, a little time to get healthy, all that type of stuff. Texas Niners says Ryan Clark, shake my head. I don't care what the pundits say. Tired of having to try and talk up Purdy. You either like him or you don't. But see, that's where I would say I don't think you either like him or you don't. I don't think it's he is great or he sucks. Why? Why does it? That's not life. I've said it a few times. I haven't said it in a while, but it's like one of the tenets of the way I think you should think about this stuff. It's not the way sports talk works or just, debate works. But a great line from Ethan Sherwood Strauss's Warrior book was, I think it was Bruce Frazier talking about how players he was talking about players who can play in the gray area, because most things happen in the gray, that things are not black. You tell them what to do and they do it. We run this play, everybody do their thing. But sometimes something happens out there, fog of war, and you have to adjust. And you hope that your teammates adjust with you, because you guys have, learned how to play the game together, have a feel. It's just talking about feel, right? There's gray area. And with Brock, there's gray. Like, I've been very positive on Brock. I've also said, guys, this is an ongoing evaluation with him. And it still is, right? If you had ended the evaluation after 2 years on Colin Kaepernick, you'd said, well, Hall of Famer. But the evaluation doesn't end after 2 years. If you'd ended the evaluation after 2 years on Alex Smith, you'd say, sucks. Will never become an NFL starter. But good news, the evaluation doesn't end after 2 years. So, I reject this idea that he can't get better. I reject this idea that we know exactly what he is. I think what we do know about Brock is he has the rare prerequisite mental abilities that it takes to play quarterback for a long time in the NFL. That we know. I think he has proven that to me beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I don't think there's a lot you can prove. You can't prove that you belong for 10 years within 2 years, for the most part, with some exceptions. Like right now, the idea that CJ Stroud isn't a franchise quarterback, nobody thinks that. Nobody would have that opinion right now. I wouldn't have that. I think he's clearly a franchise quarterback. Like, it's all there. It all looks pretty clear. But it's been 1 year. And pro football is littered with examples of players who you thought were going to be one thing after a year or two and did not become that thing. Or you didn't think were going to become that thing and they became that thing. So we'll see. I like them. But this whole thing, being a franchise quarterback, is about winning playoff games. That's what franchise quarterbacks do. They go toe-to-toe with other franchise quarterbacks and they win games. They get put behind the 8 ball with 2 minutes left and no timeouts, down by 3, and they go score a game-winning touchdown. Like, that's what they do. Not once. I said that earlier this year, like, oh, well, Purdy's got he's got to have some comebacks in him. And someone's like, well, he did it against the Raiders last year. Yeah, guys do it. Careers are made, guess what? Over careers. I know I'm different, Texas Niner. I know. Thank you. Am I seeing missed tackles? Doesn't anyone wrap up anymore? You are seeing missed tackles. It's concerning. Watching Gibbs score a touchdown on 3 straight possessions for the Lions the other day in crunch time was pretty eye-opening. I think it's only a longer evaluation for Bach versus those other quarterbacks because of his physical limitations, but he's elite in a different way than those quarterbacks processing speed and anticipation. Well, the guys with the physical traits, with the big arms, with the athleticism, I think you feel better about paying them sooner. It takes longer to prove that you can do it over a sustained amount of time. And, I think so much of the physical traits, it shows your physical upside. Like when you see a child or a puppy, a little dog with big old arms and big old legs and big old feet, you're like, that dog, I can project that dog is going to get bigger based on his physical traits, right? So when you see a young Josh Allen, Josh Allen's a great example because of how bad the stats were at Wyoming, but you projected on the physical traits. You can see it. When you don't have the physical traits, you can't project on that. So I think that's why you feel good, or better at least, about paying a young quarterback with elite physical traits, because you can project the ceiling, right? With Brock, you go, well, is he going to process any faster? Is his arm going to get stronger? Does it need to get stronger? Maybe he will. Guys do process faster as time goes on, or at least they process at the same speed, but they have more information in there that they're processing, right? Instead of processing off one Excel sheet, after 5 years, you got 5 Excel sheets of data in your brain, and you can manipulate defenses and that sort of thing. But the margin for error is just going to be smaller when you don't have the elite physical traits. So It is. I agree with this point by D'Anthony. It is a longer evaluation because of that, but I think it's good for good reason. It is. It just is a longer evaluation. I don't think it's wrong that it is a longer evaluation. Tony, Purdy had a better stat line and the game-winning drive, and we talk about Jordan Love like he hasn't been in the league for 5 years, versus Purdy, who's been in the league for barely 2. Yeah, and Jordan Love is a year older than Brock. He feels like he's been in the league for 5 years. He's been in the league for 3 years. 2020, 21, 22, 23, 4 years. 20, 21, 22, 23. Yeah, 4 years in the league. I think I said 3 the other day because he didn't play his first year. Is that right? I thought he came in the 20 season. All right. I thought he was 4 years in, but 3 years in, but it was 4. Yeah, I mean that's it's as simple as I think Tony. It's as simple as the arm. It's about his arm. It is strictly about his arm, and there's a reason. It's historically you need that level of arm. So Brock is trying to be what Drew Brees was, which was an exception to the rule. And if you're going to be an exception to the rule, you have to be undeniably. You got to bash people over the head with it. Sean, sports media doesn't really ever talk about things that aren't big or flashy. It took Drew Brees years and throwing 5,000 plus yards to be recognized for the talent that he was. But that's not just a media thing. That's just an everything thing, right? If you walk into a bar wearing a bright pink dress, you are more likely to be noticed immediately than if you walk into a bar wearing black pants and a black hoodie and the hood's up. You're just going to stand out in a different way. So that's what peacocking is all about. And having elite traits is like having a peacock's feathers. You get noticed faster. Not having elite traits, but being really smart is like having a really good personality. But you're not overly outgoing. So it takes people a little while to get to know you. Like, he's not rude. He's just shy. That's what having less than elite traits are. And Drew Brees, it wasn't just the sports media. Drew Brees was in San Diego for 5 years. Drew Brees was the 32nd pick in the draft, by the way. But even then, I mean, Drew Brees was a free agent. They moved on. They drafted Phillip Rivers. It wasn't worth. Miami thought that the risk on his shoulder wasn't worth it. And then he gets into the right situation, and he was good. I mean, he had good years in San Diego, but nobody knew when he was 26 years old and is about to enter his athletic prime that Drew Brees was about to become an all-time great quarterback, the NFL's all-time leading passer. Nobody in the league knew. So that's not just a sports media thing. This is just an everybody thing, right? You notice the things that are loud, and talent is loud. Niner Gnome. Huge advantage this weekend playing outside on grass. Lions like to play on their indoor turf. I mean, I do think it's an advantage, but Detroit's been pretty good on the road. I think Detroit's 6-2 on the road this year. Let me pull up the Lions here. And it's not like the Niners have some. Niners are 5-3 at home, I think. So it's not like the Niners have been like some dominant home field team this year. Can I get home road splits? 1-0. I'm going to do this the old school way. 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 3-1, 4-1, 5-1, 5-2, 6-2, 6-3. 6-3? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6-3 on the road for Detroit. It's good and loud there. It is good and loud there, but it's not, when it's not a dome. Second half, I saw the shot the other day of like a lot of the fans still weren't back out for the second half, which tends to happen. Helps the Niners get the ball first that the Niners usually defer, get the ball first to start the second half, and so it's not as big a deal at home. That was a Belichick thing, kind of understanding what the crowd would do and understanding that if you take the ball to start the second half, it's not going to be as loud as if you take the ball to start the game on the road, as opposed to at home where the opponent gets the ball first and it's going to be louder because people are just coming back from halftime, usually not going to be as loud. And so that doesn't hurt the Niners as much that some of the premium seat people don't get back to their seats in time for the kickoff of the second half. It's all right if you get the ball first. If the other team gets the ball first, it's a problem. You lose a little bit of your home field advantage if Detroit gets the ball first and your fans are not back to make a full stadium's worth of noise. So, but that said, I do think it's an advantage. I don't know. It doesn't feel like there've been a lot of quarterback can't hear situations though. Niners undefeated at home in the playoffs. Okay. The question is, are they advantaged over Detroit playing on grass? Maybe a little, given just Amon-Ra St. Brown to me is the guy that I'm like, that's probably tough to cover. Now, he's tough to cover if you're slipping, but he feels really tough to cover on turf. And you're definitely better off, like, where I will agree with that is their home field is excellent. Did the Niners change the playing surface? Matt Barrows, I did not have a chance to read it before the game, but I know Matt did a big piece in The Athletic about the playing surface, and he learned a lot about grass. I heard him talking about it with Kawakami on their podcast, 49ers Plus Minus. So I did not get a chance to read the article, but if you want to go read it, he wrote a piece about the playing surface, which actually now, even though it's not going to rain this week, is probably worth going back to check out. So I don't know what his conclusions were, what the deal was, but it was a big talking point, obviously, when the stadium first opened, and I guess it's kind of become one again. So yeah, you'd rather play if you're going to Ford Field with their noise. That would be it'd be concerning. And this is where being the 1 seed, and you remember there was a time when it wasn't all that obvious that they'd be a 1 seed. So where being the 1 seed really matters for them. So anyway. All right. On that note, I think that's that for that. A lot of you here in the room. I don't want to go, but kind of gotta appreciate you being here. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel very much. When you hit that like button, the YouTube algorithm says, thanks for the like. We're going to suggest this to more people, and then more people will watch it. The key to getting videos watched on YouTube is just getting the thumbnail in front of people. And when you hit the like button, you help a lot. So appreciate when you watch. Definitely appreciate when you hit that like, because you become kind of a sponsor of the show. Now, the sponsor of the show that pays is Tito's Handmade Vodka. Tito's Handmade Vodka, distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas, 40% alcohol by volume, namely 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. Maybe that's what Nick Bosa prefers. People were assuming Nick Bosa was talking about weed. Said beer doesn't really do it for him. I would imagine after a game, back in the day, dudes were just cracking beers left and right, smoking a cig in the locker room. But those days have changed. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here on a Monday. A lot to get to. Plenty more to jump in. We'll see. Kyle talks later today. Shanahan talks at 3:30 today. And that's not one of the ones. I don't think it's not one of the ones that the 49ers put out video on. That's a conference call. So I think that's how that timeline is going to play out. But in any event, Kyle may say something worth jumping back on the tube for. So if that happens, I'll be back. Otherwise, talk to everybody soon. Thanks. Later.